Hello students, welcome to Banik Smart Class. This is SK Raut, Mentor Indian Polity. Banik, the institution which has been acting as a friend, philosopher, guide in your career building, is now launching its online session to help you out during this period. Students, let us start the class. Look at the structure of the class. In this class, we shall discuss first some important points on each topic first. Some important points, the valid points on each topic briefly. Then we shall discuss some relevant questions as most possible questions for upcoming civil service examinations. Before going to start the class, let us have a look at the importance of Indian polity in your civil service examination and how to deal with the subject. As you know, Indian polity holds a substantial position among all the subjects in general studies paper. In fact, the performance in Indian polity will invariably influence the performance in GS studies. So, we should be careful about that and prepare much. Then, how to deal with this subject? Indian polity is quite an interesting subject. It is not a cumbersome or difficult one. This deals with, in fact, our government and day-to-day functioning of the government, the society in which we live in, the performance of the government, the political parties, the parliament, so some typical things that is related to our life. So, Indian polity is a part of our life. So, understanding Indian polity requires to have an in-depth idea about life in modern day. You can better understand it if you understand what is government. If you read in newspaper, you can understand what is government, what is parliament, what is a bill, what is a provision, what is article, everything. So, understanding Indian polity is related to understanding our day-to-day life in modern world. In fact, Indian polity is very easy to understand if we have a look at the structure of our government. We are electing MLAs, MPs, why we are electing. So, all these things will be answered in the video in respective classes. This is what you know about Indian polity and why it is important. Now, we shall start the first topic of Indian polity, that is making of the constitution. So, the first chapter is making of the constitution. What is the meaning of making of the constitution? Making of the constitution means the process in which the constitution was prepared or finalized. The constitution was not made by a single person or a couple of persons. It was made by an assembly. It was made by an assembly of people. You can say that the learned people and educated people, the then world. So, assembly of people who are engaged in making a constitution of India, and that assembly was called Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly was recommended by Cabinet Mission in 1946. All of you know who were the prominent members of the Cabinet Mission. So, the Cabinet Mission recommended to have a Constituent Assembly for undivided India. Then the assembly was built. It recommended a single assembly, means single Constituent Assembly for united India, that means the present Pakistan and India. And the assembly had to have a strength of 389, that means 389 members. Out of 389 members, 296 were to be elected from, that is, British India. 296 were to be from British India. Repeat, 296 members were from British India. British India refers to the states which were directly ruled by the British government, and 93 from princely states which were indirectly ruled by the British India. Then for the directly ruled British provinces, governors provinces, for example, Odisha was a governor's province, Bombay was a governor's province, Bengal was a governor's province. So you know that there were many provinces which were under the direct rule of British hegemony. And for these British India, British Indian territories, there was indirect election provided for the election of members. Indirect election means the members to the Constituent Assembly, the members to the Constituent Assembly from the provinces were to be elected by the members of provincial legislative assemblies at the provinces. They were to be elected by the members of the provincial legislative assemblies. So that therefore it is called indirect election. For example, from Odisha there were 9 members, there are from 9 members. Then nomination of members from princely states. The members which were to be sent from princely states were to be nominated. So who nominated them? The rulers of the princely states nominated them. So 93 members were to be nominated. And in this way the Constituent Assembly was formed, but all of you know that the princely states did not join the assembly at first. The assembly had its first meeting on 9 December 1946. 9 December 1946. On that day only 211 members were present. And on that very day the president of the assembly was who was appointed for temporary period, that is Sachidananda Sinha. So hence we have mentioned his temporary president. But on 11 December, the next day, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was chosen as the permanent president, and he remained the president of the assembly until the last day of the assembly. So Rajendra Prasad was the permanent president, in fact he was the president, and Sachidananda Sinha was the temporary president. So the assembly had its vice president also. S.C. Mukherjee was its vice president. The assembly held its meetings periodically. That means it was not a continuous body, it was not meeting continuously or every day, it was meeting periodically. Hence it had 11 sessions in total, 11 sessions. It met for 11 sessions. And as you know, the assembly was not, the Constituent Assembly was recommended and constituted during the rule of British, because in 1946, so it was, British was there. So it was not a sovereign body. But when India got independence, on 15th August 1947, that assembly became a sovereign body. What do you mean by sovereign? Sovereign means independent, supremely independent body. So as the assembly was established in 1946, it was not a sovereign body, but when India became independent, it became a sovereign body. Then when it became independent, the assembly performed dual role. So we shall know what is the dual role of the assembly. Dual means two roles of the assembly. First of all, it performed its assigned role of making the constitution. It was its foremost duty to prepare the constitution, so it performed its assigned role of making the constitution. But when India became independent and the British Parliament was seized to have its hegemony over India, and it could not make any law for India, so the assembly, Constituent Assembly, performed as a provisional parliament. You can say that provisional parliament for India. Provisional means temporary. Provisional parliament for India. So one role that is a Constituent Assembly for making the constitution. Second role was provisional assembly, provisional parliament for the newly independent country. And that is called dual rule. And when the assembly performed as a Constituent Assembly, the president was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. But when the assembly performed as provisional parliament for newly independent India, it was G.V. Mavalankar, the first speaker, all of you remember, the first speaker who presided over the assembly. So, G.V. Mavalankar was the president when the assembly was acted as provisional parliament for independent India, hence it is called dual role. Sometimes you may get a short note to write a short note on dual role of the assembly when you get 5-mark questions sometimes in civil service examinations. So, that is dual role. Then after independence, as the country was partitioned, so the members of Muslim League shifted to Pakistan. Therefore, the strength of the assembly was reduced to 299. So, from how much? From 389 to 299. And what was the division? 229 from British India provinces and 70 from princely states. Are you getting my point or not? That is, the 229 from British India, then 70 from princely states. After what? After the partition of the country and after independence. That is, therefore, we have written strength reduced to 299 after when? After 15th August 1947. Then the constitution, as the members of the assembly worked day and night to provide a constitution for the newly independent country. And the constitution was finally adopted on 26th November 1949. It is very important day. Don't forget that it was adopted on 26 November 1949. And you know that it takes 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. That is 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to complete the constitution. And finally, the constitution was effected on 26 January 1950. That means the day of commencement of the constitution. All the provisions, all the articles of Indian constitution came into operation on 26 January 1950. But the constitution was adopted on 26 November 1949, and on this day, do you know how many members were present? That is 284. 284 members were present, and these members signed the constitution. So, finally, the constitution was adopted and it came into being, choosing the date 26 January 1950. Do you know why 26 January was chosen as the Republic Day of India? Because on this day in Lahore session, the Congress hoisted the national flag on the bank of Ravi, that is in 1930. So, to commemorate the historic day, the day has been chosen as 26 January 1950. Then the several committees were appointed. In fact, because several committees were established to work on different aspects of the constitution. So, there were several committees to execute the Herculean task of making the constitution of a country, and prominent among them was drafting committee that was appointed on 29th August 1947, chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and the drafting committee drafted the constitution. So, apart from providing a constitution for independent India, the Constituent Assembly also performed some important tasks during the period, that is 2 years, 11 months, 18 days. It also performed some other important national work, national tasks. First of all, it adopted national flag, the tricolor national flag of India, that is your national flag, tricolor national flag, that is 22nd July 1947. It adopted the national flag on 22nd July 1947. The national anthem of Jana Gana Mana was also adopted during this session, and all the national song was adopted, and Dr. Rajendra was declared as the President of Republic of India. It was on the same day, that is 24th January 1950. So, on 25th January 1950, the national anthem Jana Gana Mana was adopted, and On 24 January 1950, National Song Vande Mataram was also adopted. On that very day, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the President of the Republic of India. Do you know that the 24th January 1950 was itself the last meeting day of the Constituent Assembly? On that day, the Constituent Assembly was dissolved. And the first stanza of the national anthem, as you know, that was adopted as national anthem. First stanza of Jana Gana Mana was adopted as national anthem, and the national song Vande Mataram is derived from the famous novel of Bankim Chandra, that is Ananda Matha. So all this data you must have idea about them. So while you are asked to write the other important functions of the Constituent Assembly, you must not forget to mention these 4 important points. Okay. Now we shall go to some relevant questions on this topic, making of the Constitution. We get very few questions on this topic because it is a very short question. But before going to discuss the question, you must have an idea how to deal with the questions that appear in our civil service paper. What is paramount about civil services paper is that the answer must be written within a prescribed word limit. The questions will be bigger, but that must be confined within few words. How is it possible? Sometimes the question haunts us. How to confine such a lengthy answer within a few area, within few words. So for that, I think you must concentrate on CQ formula. CQ. That is your content, the content, proper content. So C means proper content should be there. Then correctness of the language. Because if you commit some visible error in your answer paper, that may create a bad impression. For example, if you write the President of India enjoyed various powers. Suppose the question is about the powers of the President. So your first sentence is the President of India enjoyed ED, various powers. So you have written enjoyed unintentionally, but this may catch the eyes of the examiner, vigilant eyes of the examiner. So it may create a bad impression about you that you don't have fundamental knowledge in grammar. So always stick to correctness of language. Don't commit any visible error. I repeat, that is visible error. Okay, in English. That is content, correctness, and that is conclusion. You must have a good conclusion. Okay, so conclude properly and always have a positive conclusion. Never go negatively. You are going to be part of the government. So write always positive. What can be done? So all these things, these simple things should be kept in mind, that conciseness of the answer, proper content, and your proper conclusion. And try to put all the points within that sphere, limited sphere. Okay? So this is how to deal with the questions that appear in our mains examination for general studies in mains examination. Okay? Should we start the question first? So the first question is, write a brief note on the composition and functions of the Constituent Assembly of India. So what is the meaning of composition? Composition means strength. What is the number of that we have just discussed? The number of members. And the composition also means how the member got into the assembly. That means by means of election or nomination. So we have already discussed. So first give one line about what is a Constituent Assembly. Don't forget to write, because it will be the important line for your introduction. So constituent, you can write Constituent Assembly refers to an assembly of people sat together to prepare or draft a constitution. You can write the democratic constitution for newly independent India. Again I repeat, That is, a constituent assembly refers to an assembly of people, a learned people who sat together to draft a constitution for newly independent India. That is all. The first line is covered. Then the strength of the assembly. You can write the second sentence. The original strength of the assembly was 389. 280, that out of 389 or out of it, 296 were to be elected by the British India provinces and 93 were to be nominated by the princely states. However, after independence, the strength was reduced to 299. Out of 299, as you know, we have already discussed that 229 were from British India provinces and 70 from princely states. That is all about the strength. Then you have to write the election and nomination of members. As you know that the members from the British India provinces were to be elected by the members of the provincial legislative assemblies. That was an indirect election, you can write. Then the members from the princely states were to be nominated by the rulers of the princely states. Okay, that is all about election and nomination. So that we can say that it was both, it was composed of both elected and nominated members. That is all about this point. Then come to the function in brief. As the name suggests, the original function of the assembly was to prepare or draft a democratic constitution for independent India. That's all. You stop it. You can give a full stop. Don't write more. Then come to legislative function. So in that way you can write that after 15th August 1947, the assembly was to look after the laws or look after the governance of the country. Hence, it acted as a legislature, provincial legislature. Sorry, that is provisional. You can say provisional legislature for the country, and it was its legislative function. So you can also write there that when it was acting as a constituent assembly, Rajendra Prasad chaired the assembly, and when it acted as a provisional legislature, G.V. Mavalankar chaired the assembly. This is how you can conclude. So the in the conclusion, one sentence you can add: the Constituent Assembly had performed unprecedented function of making a resilient and successful, resilient constitution for independent India. You can write the word resilient. That means despite upon the ups and downs, the Indian constitution is still alive. Okay, so don't forget to write the last sentence that the Constituent Assembly had performed unprecedented task of making a resilient constitution for independent India. Okay, so that is all about your question number 1. I hope you get it and write immediately. And if you have any idea, to put it, but complete the answer. Okay, that is number 1. Then we shall go to the second. Now look at the second question. The second question about critically examine the composition and function of the Constituent Assembly. So when you are asked to critically examine, you know that you have to go to some extent, to bitter extent, to criticize or to have some its flaws. You know that flaws, defects, and you have to deal it with in a constructive manner. Okay. So here in this case, we have to go somewhat that is a constructive, go for a constructive criticism, critically examine the composition. See, we have already discussed the composition and function. Here we have to mention. First, you give a line that the Constituent Assembly was established under the recommendation of Cabinet Mission, performed for about 3 years to prepare a constitution for India. However, the assembly suffers from the following. That's all. Number 1 point, make it a visible point, also underline the point, not a representative body, and write one line giving column, not a representative body. Write down here that the Constituent Assembly was not a properly representative body. It was a representative body because it was elected, but it was not a properly representative body. Why? Because the members were not directly elected by the people of India. That's all. Don't write that there was no election system, that is not our concern in this question. So, write only that it was not a representative body because people, the members were not elected directly by the people. Then it was not a sovereign body. Obviously, it was not a sovereign body because it was appointed, it was constituted under the recommendation of the Cabinet Mission in 1946. When British was ruling India. So, it was not a sovereign body at the time of inception. You can write it was not a sovereign body at the time of inception, means that is beginning, but later on 15th August or later post 15th August 1947, post 15th August 1947 it became a sovereign body. Then time consuming. You can write critics are of the opinion, critics, do not say that I am of the opinion, say critics, some critics are of the opinion that the assembly took many years, but that means a long period to prepare the constitution. It was a time consuming because it was brooding over, thinking over, brooding over one provision for many times, for many days. So, it was a time consuming, write simply that assembly took a long time to prepare a constitution of India. Then it was dominated by Congress. In fact, it is a necessary things because at that time there was no All India party except Congress. So, most of the members belong to Indian National Congress. However, write that critics are of the opinion that most of the members, about 80 to 85% of the members were from Indian National Congress. So, it was dominated by Congress. No other political party had its visible representation in the assembly. That is all. Then it is said that most of the members belong to lawyers and some were the seasoned politicians of the then India. So, sometimes the assembly is called lawyers, that is lawyers paradise, lawyers paradise. So, some critics call it lawyers paradise because of the large number of lawyers present in the assembly, including the prominent Badruddin Taibji and your Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Okay, so that is therefore called lawyer political domination. Then dominated by Hindus. After partition of India, most of the Muslim members shifted to the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan. So, most of the members shifted, therefore, the majority members belong to Hindus, but that does not mean that Constituent Assembly of India did not have Muslim members. There were many Muslim members including Taibji, Maulana Kalam Azad, the first education minister, so many members were there, but still the majority of Hindus were present, hence critics are of the opinion that it was dominated by Hindus. So, after explaining the points in few couple of lines, do not mention more, only 1-2 sentences put, then conclude it right like this, that although the Constituent Assembly suffers from the above lacuna, yet it had made or it had performed one of the historic job of drafting a constitution which is proved to be the most successful and resilient one in the present day world. That is all you can conclude. Okay? So, that is question number 2. Then you can have possible questions also, that is the recommendation of the mentioned Cabinet Mission 1946 short note, or you can write over a brief note on the Constituent Assembly of India. So, in the brief note you have to mention everything, that is your composition, function, and also some critical points in the conclusion. Okay. So, overall this is the final thing about your making of the Constitution for your OCS exam. Well, let us discuss the second chapter of Indian polity for your OCS mains examination, that is salient features of Indian Constitution by Constitution of India. Why it is called salient? Because these features are unique to Indian Constitution. It is the only constitution which contains so many salient features, and these are inbuilt or unique to the Constitution of India. Therefore, they are called salient. Before going to have some look at the questions, let us have some points on this chapter. First salient feature of Indian Constitution is, it is the lengthiest written constitution of the world, because it contains so many articles and schedules. Originally it had 395 articles and 8 schedules. You can also say that there were 22 parts, isn't it? But at present it covers about more than 465 articles, and you know that today we have 12 schedules and about 25 parts. So therefore, it has become lengthier than other constitution of the world. Then the second, what is the reason of being lengthiest? There are some geographical, historical factors: vastness of the country, the influence or the impact of the Government of India Act 1935, and provisions, detailed provisions of each part, and detailed provision for scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and weaker section of the society. Therefore, we have a lengthier constitution. So the reason for being the lengthiest are many. Geographical, historical, cultural factors are also there. Then it is drawn from different sources, which we have a question also, that Indian Constitution is labelled as a bag of borrowed features comment. We shall discuss that, but it is drawn from different sources. Yes, that means many provisions are brought from different successful constitutions of the then world. It incorporates the accumulated experience of different constitutions. That means that not that we have just brought some provision and pasted it. It is from the accumulated experience of different constitutions, means the successful provisions of different constitutions are being put into the Indian Constitution. Okay, therefore it is called drawn from different sources. Here sources means different constitutions and documents. Then Indian Constitution is partly rigid and partly flexible. We have a question also, that is what is related to? It is related to amendability of the Constitution. Amendability means change. The Constitution is called rigid because it can be amended through a difficult manner. That means under Article 368 with a special majority. Therefore, it is called rigid Constitution. Then the Constitution can be amended by a simple majority. Therefore, it is called flexible. So therefore, it is called blending of rigidity and flexibility. So here rigidity and flexibility are related to what? Related to amendability of the Constitution. Okay. So therefore, it is called a partly rigid and partly flexible. So it is an often question. The question comes often in your mains examination. We shall have a discussion on that. The Constitution, next point that we will go to, the Constitution provides for a parliamentary system of government. It is the Constitution that provides for parliamentary form of government, because parliament, the government, the executive is responsible to parliament. Therefore, it is called parliamentary form. Why India is called a parliamentary form of government? Because the executive, that means the government, is accountable for its acts of omission and commission to Indian Parliament. And another thing, that the executive are members of the Parliament. Therefore, it is called a parliamentary form of government. But we have brought a change in the parliamentary form of government. That is, we have an elected head, but in almost all parliamentary government, the countries those who are parliamentary government, for example in England, that is an hereditary head. But although we have a parliamentary system of government, but we have chosen an elected president, hence India is called a republic. Okay. So, we have provided for a parliamentary form of government. Then the constitution makes India a secular state. India is a pluralistic society, different religions, different castes, different communities coexist here. Hence, the makers of the constitution did not want India to be a one or mono-religious country. So, it made India a secular country, and the word secular is found mentioned in the preamble that India is a secular country. And the secular provisions are found mentioned in article 14, 15, 16 you can say, then your 21, then article 25 to 28, 29, 30. So, there are many, 326, right to vote, right to religious freedom, freedom of speech, 19, article 19, freedom, right to freedom. So, all these make us a secular country. So, India is a secular country for many reasons. Right to equality is provided under article 14. No discrimination, no citizen can be discriminated on the ground of religious, race, caste, sex, place of birth, that is article 50. And all will get equal opportunity, public employment irrespective of religion, that is article 16. Then there we have 6 freedoms, right to freedom under article 19, right to life under article 21, then protection against double jeopardy irrespective of any religion, that is 20, then we have 25 to 28 right to religious freedom, then 29, 30 for minorities. So many provisions amply prove that Indian constitution is bending, or Indian constitution bends for a secular state, not a religious state. So, you can explain it in your own way, but keep in memory the provisions that are related to secular state. Then Indian constitution combines the features of both the federal and unitary system of government. We shall discuss that Indian constitution is sometimes termed as federal in form, unitary in spirit. Although we have several federal features like 2 governments, written constitution, we shall discuss that, 2 government written constitution. We have also some unitary features like strong center, integrated judiciary, isn't it? So, that there are the unitary features. So, Indian constitution combines both federal and unitary features, hence India is called a, that is quasi-federal state, quasi. India is called a quasi-federal. Quasi means semi-federal, that it has dual features, that is your unitary features and federal features, that is a part. Then next point is constitution contains an elaborate list of fundamental rights and duties. Unlike other constitutions, Indian constitutions provide for detailed elaborate provisions on fundamental rights and fundamental duties. Fundamental duties are confined in part 3 of the Indian constitution from article 12 to 35, isn't it? And fundamental rights are borrowed from American constitution. But unlike America, where there is no elaborate provision or detailed description of the rights available to citizens, Indian constitution provides for a detailed the description on the rights and the restrictions of fundamental rights in part 3 of the constitution. Then we did not have, originally we did not have fundamental duties, but post emergency in 1975 made the government include a part specifically for containing fundamental duties, and it is contained in part IBA, and we have at present how many fundamental duties? 11 fundamental duties, and you know that the 11th fundamental duty was added by which amendment? That is 86 Constitutional Amendment Act 2002. So therefore, these are the unique features. We have both fundamental rights and duties, because duties and rights are like two sides of a coin. Unless you perform your duties, others may fail to enjoy their rights. Therefore, they are inseparable, indivisible part of the Constitution. Okay, next we shall go to the next point. So the next point, salient feature of Indian Constitution. The Constitution outlines certain directive principle of state policy, that means DPSP, which the government has to keep in mind while framing laws and formulating policies. All of you know that DPSPs are nothing but positive instructions to the government at various levels to perform certain duties, fundamental duties towards the people. So, in order to establish a welfare state, what is the objective of DPSP? To establish a welfare state. So, in order to achieving a welfare state, the Constitution of India provides detailed instruction to the government to carry out certain objectives in the better interest of the people of India, or the common people of India. So, therefore, DPSPs, and DPSP is borrowed from which constitution? That is Irish Constitution of India. It is contained in Part IB of Indian Constitution, 36 to 51 article. In articles you will find DPSP. It is borrowed from Irish Constitution, DPSP. We shall have a class on that, and at that time we shall deal with this. Then the next point, the Constitution provides for a bicameral legislature. What do you mean by bicameral? Cameral means house, bi means two, cameral means house. So bicameral means two houses. So the bicameral legislature at the center consisting of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and that bicameralism is a derivative of British Constitution, because British Parliament has a bicameral structure, that is House of Commons and House of Lords. So on that pattern we have a bicameral legislature, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, hence Parliament is bicameral. And for your knowledge and information, I may say here that some states are also having bicameral legislatures. We shall deal with that at the time of discussion on state legislature. Then the Constitution vests extraordinary powers in the presidents during emergency. The President of India under Article 352 gets extraordinary powers, means the center assumes all the powers of the governance of the country. It can make law on state list, it can make laws on concurrent list, it can make law on union list. So on the three lists it gets a power, absolute power to make laws. So here the President means the government of India can make a law and can regulate law for the interest of the country during emergency. It means that the power of the states or the authority of the states is kept under suspended animation. The state assemblies, the state governments are not dissolved, but powers are taken from them and vested in the central government during emergency. And you know that emergency is clamped on three grounds, that is war, external aggression and your armed rebellion. That is under Article 352. So the center assumes more power, therefore it is also a unitary feature. This provision makes India unitary, because central government becomes powerful, ignoring the states, but it is essential for emergencies, only emergency. Then it provides for a secular state, probably we have discussed it, secular provision of the country, that is mentioned. Then next point, it provides for an independent judiciary. So let us have a brief look at what is called independent judiciary, because every time we discuss the point we can get acquainted with the topic. So at any time if we get any point, have some points on that, have some discussion on that. What is independent judiciary? Although we will have a discussion on judiciary at that time, but let us have a brief look why India is, or why Indian judiciary is called independent, and what is the necessity of being independent. The necessity of being independent is that judiciary can perform impartially and unbiasedly, BIASEDLY, unbiased, without pressure from other organs of the government like legislature and executive. So, in order to enable the judiciary function impartially, the Constitution provides for an independent judiciary. That is the answer. Why? What is the necessity of being independent? Then how? How the judiciary is independent? Judiciary is independent on various grounds. For example, mode of appointment of the judges of Supreme Court and High Court. They are appointed by the executive, by the president, no doubt, but on the recommendation of a collegium that is consisting of judges or judicial members. So, that is therefore, the appointment of judges is not the prerogative of, or is not a independent work of president. He has to consult the Chief Justice, and Chief Justice of India in turn consults other judges, that is called collegium. So, therefore, the judiciary is independent. Then mode of removal. Judges cannot be removed by the president. They are not they don't hold office during the pleasure of the president. They can be removed only after a motion, removal resolution is passed with a special majority by the parliament. So, it is a difficult procedure. Therefore, judges are independent. They cannot be removed at the drop of the pin. That is the thing. Then their salary are charged expenditure, that means parliament cannot reduce it. So, they are charged expenditure, salaries are charged expenditure, and fixed service condition they enjoy. The service condition cannot be varied during their tenure. So, these are the points that makes India or Indian judiciary independent, and independent judiciary is an essential ingredient of a successful democracy. Is an essential ingredient of a successful democracy. So, you can comment it. Sometimes it is called, a question comes that Indian judiciary is both independent and integrated, justified. Okay. Then comes your Constitution introduces universal adult franchise. It gives the right to vote to all citizens above 18 years of age without discrimination. So, universal adult franchise is a system that makes or enables 18 years of old citizens to vote in public election. Prior to 61st Amendment Act 1989, it was 21 years. Now, the voting age has been reduced to 18 years. And it was reduced by which amendment? 61st Amendment Act 1989 during the Prime Ministership of Rajiv Gandhi. Okay? So, that is called universal adult suffrage provided under article, which article contains it? 326. Article 326 contains the provision of, that is, adult franchise. So, now irrespective of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, all are eligible to vote. So, we shall now move to the next point. The next point is the Constitution provides for a single citizenship. Single citizenship. That means, like British, like the UK, we have a single citizenship. So, what is the meaning of dual citizenship exactly? Dual citizenship as prevalent in the USA means two types of citizenship, one state citizenship, another federal citizenship. That means not ki one is a citizen of two countries. One is a citizen of the state first, then the citizen of the whole country. For example, you take example of California is a state in America. The person born in California is a citizen of California first, then he is a citizen of United States of America. That is called dual citizenship. But in our country, irrespective of the place wherever we are born, wherever we are brought up, we are a citizen of India. We are Indian citizen. We are not citizen of Odisha. We are not citizen of West Bengal. We are not citizen of Maharashtra. We are citizen of India, that is called single citizenship. What is the benefit of single citizenship? The benefit of single citizenship is to cement the unity and integrity of the country. The country will not be fragmented, broken. That is the reason of single citizenship. So, to keep intact the unity and integrity of the country, we have provided single citizenship in part 2, article 5 to 11, that is called single. Then the constitution makes for special provision in part 16 of the constitution. We shall be dealing that towards the end of our session. We shall be dealing about special provisions for SC and ST. So, keep watching the classes, you will be getting good number of questions on each chapter. So, the Constitution of India makes special provision for minorities, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in part 16. We have reservation, we have certain provisions for the for these categories of people. Why? Because of their upliftment, to bring them from the down to the mainstream level, so that they can feel comfortable, they can live as a proper citizen of the country. So, therefore, there is a special provision for them in a specific part, that is called part 16. Then the constitution draws its authority from the people and has been promulgated in the name of the people. What is the proof? That the evidence from the preamble that deals states, we the people of India do hereby adopt, enact, give to ourselves this constitution. So, the ultimate authority in India is who? Is people. Because it is we the people who have made this constitution possible. So, people are the center, are the pivot around whom the entire system revolves. So, they are the crux of the things, they are the cream of the things, system of the governance. Without them, the constitution is a nullity. The constitution is a nullity. Therefore, people are the center of the governance of the country, and it derives its authority from the people of the country. Therefore, the constitution, that the people, the representatives are ultimately responsible to people. That is the final point of its salient features. Now we shall move to the questions related on this. So, some relevant questions on salient feature of Indian constitution. Very often we will find this question, Indian constitution is a bag of borrowed features. Every time if you go through the previous papers, you will find this question rampantly found among them. So, it is a very popular or common question and very easy to write also. See, the word comment means you have to give your opinion. So, the word borrowed is to some extent negative, that have we borrowed blindly, have we made the constitution a mere copy paste, or we have brought some changes in the provisions and then pasted it. Is Indian constitution a copy paste constitution? The answer is big no. So, how to start the answer? See, first, need for borrowing. You must spend 1-2 sentences writing what was the need for borrowing, because what is the need? So, you start like this: India did not have a tradition of having a constitution. When the leaders of the then India decided to have a constitution, they followed different successful constitution of that time. That is all. That is called need. So, as we did not have a tradition of the constitution, we borrowed the features. We examined or we studied the maker. Borrowed here does not mean ki copy paste. We studied. The leaders studied different successful provisions of different constitutions. Then they found the possibility whether these provisions should be suitable to India's socio-cultural environment or not. That is all. So, you can spend couple of sentences on need for borrowing. India did not have a tradition of borrowing, tradition of constitution, hence the leaders studied different provisions. Then major features borrowed, give some points, that is we have borrowed major features from different constitution. Most of the provisions of the present constitution are a derivative of Government of India Act 1935, Government of India Act 1935. 35, that is the foremost. Then we have borrowed fundamental rights from USA Constitution, then parliamentary form of government from your British Constitution, rule of law and citizenship from this Constitution, then strong federation, strong center with federation, federation with strong center from Canadian Constitution, amendment provision from South African Constitution. So, give some 5 to 6 features that we borrowed, that we have borrowed from different prominent constitutions of the world in this part. Then most provisions from then parliamentary form of government, rule of law England, fundamental rights, judicial review, equal protection of law USA, amendment provision South Africa, federation with strong center Canada. So, these are the provisions we have borrowed. So, give some outstanding features, not all. Then what to write in conclusion? In conclusion, you must write that although we have borrowed different provisions from different successful constitutions of the world, it is not a mere copy-paste constitution. It is not a mere copy-paste constitution. We cannot say that Indian constitution is a merely of copy-paste constitution. We have borrowed different provisions and made some required changes in them, then fitted it into the constitution. For example, we can say that we have borrowed parliamentary form of government from British, from in the UK, but we have provided an elected head in place of a hereditary head. That is one example. You can also give an example of fundamental rights. We have borrowed fundamental rights from USA, but unlike USA, we have a detailed description of detailed elaboration of fundamental rights in part 3 of Indian Constitution. So, in this way give two justification, not necessarily more justification. You can give justification of parliamentary form of government, despite parliamentary government we provide an elected head. You can give fundamental rights in the conclusion that we have detailed elaboration of fundamental like them. So, in this way you can conclude the question. Is that clear? I hope you all of you are clear about the answer. Try writing, start writing, okay, and send your comments. We shall examine what you are facing, what problem you are facing, so that we can step or improve our classes to cope with the situation. Okay. Next we shall move to the next question, that is the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India is a blending of flexibility and rigidity. That I have already told you during the discussion of salient features of Indian Constitution, that is related to amendability of Constitution. So, very sentence, opening sentence should be that this question or the blending of flexibility and rigidity refers to the amendability of the Constitution. That is all. Then the Constitution can be amended in two ways. That is in two ways, that is by simple majority. Constitution can be amended by simple majority. You know very well that it is simple majority. It is majority of members present and voting in the parliament. Number 2, that is special majority. So, you can say that is special majority, the second way. And some provisions can be amended by special majority with states ratification. State ratification. Some provisions can be amended with state ratification. These are the three ways the Constitution can be amended. When the Constitution is then when the Constitution is amended by simple majority, it is called flexibility of Constitution. When the Constitution is amended by special majority, you can say it is called rigidity of the Constitution. Got it? So, it is also the part of rigidity. So, when Constitution is amended by special majority, it is called rigid Constitution. When the Constitution is amended by simple majority, it is called flexible Constitution. In this way, the Constitution is amended. Then conclude it properly that as the Constitution is amended in both ways, That means both rigidity and flexibility. Hence it is called a blending of flexibility and rigidity. So you get it will be 100 watts or 125 watts, no doubt. Okay. So that is all about the fourth question. Then we will move to the next question, that is question number 5 of this session. The Constitution of India is federal in form but unitary in spirit. Elucidate. So here elucidate, that means it is a fact. You have to just write on that. So that is federal form. So the Constitution of India is sometimes called the federal in form, unitary in spirit. Justify. The question can be asked in different ways, like Constitution of India is federal in form or unitary in spirit, or discuss the federal and unitary features of Indian Constitution. So different questions but same answer. So before going to write these points, first introduce the question properly, or opening sentence. What will be the opening sentence? That Indian Constitution provides for both a federal and unitary setup. Use the word setup. It contains some important provisions of a federal government and also a unitary provisions of important unitary provisions. So federal features of the Constitution are two government. We have two governments, that is central government and state government. Even we have 3-tier government today, that is your local self government. So we have two governments. Division of power is there, that is in the 7th schedule you will find state list, union list and concurrent list. So we have division of power, that is foremost characteristic of a federal government. Then we have a written constitution. Yes, we have a written, lengthiest written constitution, so to say. Then we have supremacy of the Constitution. Neither judiciary nor legislature nor your executive is supreme. Who is supreme here? That is the judiciary is supreme. Judiciary, that is the Constitution is supreme above all. That is then independent judiciary. We have already focused on independent judiciary and also bicameralism. So these are the important cardinal features of federation. Then we have non-federal, that means you have unitary, so to say unitary features. We have written non-federal, but you write unitary feature because the question has asked unitary. So what are the unitary features of our Constitution? So we have a strong center. Despite having a federation, we have a strong center, and the reason is there, but the reason is there why we have a strong center, but still we have provided a federation with a strong center borrowed from Canadian Constitution. Then we have a single citizenship, part 2 of the Constitution. Then single constitution. So unlike America, we do not have dual constitution. We do not have a constitution for the state and we do not have a constitution for the whole country or the union. So therefore we have a single constitution. Then single citizenship. Then we have flexibility of constitution, can be amended as we have discussed in a simple majority. Then integrated judiciary. Okay. Then that means we have a hierarchy of what is the meaning of integrated? That means hierarchy of courts. Hierarchy of courts. That means Supreme Court, High Court, then your subordinate courts. That is called integrated judiciary. Then appointment of state governor by the center. Yes, although the governor is the head of the state at the state level, but he is appointed by the central government, that is president. All India services is a unique feature of unitary feature. Emergency provisions, as you know that during this time the central government assumes all the powers of the state government, so it becomes very difficult for the state to operate independently. Then another notable feature of unitary feature is that the word federation is not mentioned. Some prominent words are not mentioned in the Constitution, including federation. Another was cabinet, but it is now found in Article 352 added to it by 42nd Amendment. But 44th Amendment, but it is the word federation is now is missing from the Constitution, nowhere used in the Constitution. One other hand describes India as a union of states. Union of States. So the word cabinet was also not found mentioned, but it is now present in Article 352. Then described as federal in form, unitary in spirit, quasi-federal by Tesi Hoare. So you can conclude the question by saying that Indian Constitution is truly is federal in form but unitary in spirit, as said by Tesi Hoare of England. Okay, so this is all about, friends, about this the two chapters we have discussed. In the next video we shall be discussing the next important chapters, that is preamble and union and its territory. Thank you very much.